Today on Top Gear Rearview, I come over all communist.
There is something majestic about seeing a Lada drifting around a corner.
And Jeff and I really like Steely Dan.
I like Steely Dan.
Who doesn't like Steely Dan?
Hello and welcome to Top Gear Rearview. Tonight we're talking about the new Top Gear Series 1, Episode 8.
This episode aired on the 8th of December in 2002, and the star in a reasonably priced car was the infamous Sir Michael Gambon.
Tonight's segments, we look at some hot premium saloons, including the Audi RS6 and the Mercedes E55 AMG. We soup up a Lada Riva 1.5e. We look at the latest batch of superminis. The Maserati Coupé is brought around the track by Mr. Jeremy, and the challenge of the episode is the fastest white van man in a Ford World Rally Transit. So kicking things off with these sedans, this was a good batch. We started, they were showing in the studio the E39 generation M5 and then the Jaguar S-Type R before bouncing into the RS6. So really a nice, just a fine group of cars there.
This isn't the M5 that had the V10, is it? Or is this still a V8?
I believe this is a V10.
Okay, all right.
Give me a sec, I'm going to double check.
They were kind of down on the M5. They were really kind of, they weren't, Jeremy at least, was not a very big fan of the M5 in the way he was talking about it, but he really, really spoke highly of the RS6. He was all about the RS6.
Yes, he was.
It's a very positive review.
God, it's fast. So much power. Because I couldn't live without those looks and that power. This car is a stairway to heaven, a Bohemian Rhapsody. But this, I think, is one of the best-made cars on the road today.
Yeah. No, I'm wrong. No, this is actually the V8. So they went to the V10 with the E60 generation, which was the follow-up to this one a couple years later.
All right. So, I mean, I guess that's one thing. They talk a lot about them being all right around 400 horsepower. So the BMW M5 is around 400. They briefly mentioned the Jaguar S-Type R around 400 horsepower. But this was a review of the RS6 Audi, essentially. I guess this one's right around 450 horsepower.
Yeah, this is a 4.2 liter V8, a twin turbo, and all-wheel drive. I believe the rest of this batch is all rear-wheel drive.
Okay, yes, that is correct.
Yeah. Now, I did notice they were kind of, looking at the comps of that era, like they got most of them, but they missed the Maserati Quattroporte, which I would put in that same batch. Which
is interesting because they talk about the Maserati later in the episode.
At the end. Yeah, no, it's about the same size, maybe a little bigger, but it's a four-door, it's a saloon, and it's luxury, and it is about 400 horsepower on the nose. So it's kind of like, what, you guys forgot one. But anyway, I like the segment, running around the English countryside. It was all, the geography over there is just over my head, so I don't know. But apparently that's where all the rock stars live.
Everyone down here is in a band. And that makes pulling over and asking for directions a rare treat. Excuse me. Could you tell me the way to Steve Winwood's house, please?
Steve Winwood, yes. Up here, till you get to Van Morrison's.
Yeah.
Left, up to Sting's Trout Lake.
Yeah.
Round that, and at the T-junction by Peter Gabriel's, you make a left.
Okay, brilliant. Thanks very much. What band are you in?
Pink Floyd.
Oh, you're the drummer, aren't you? Sure. Have you got an Audi?
A few, yes.
Got one of these?
Coming at Christmas.
Thanks very much.
Bye.
Yeah, apparently that's where all the rock stars live. There was a lot of hyperbole in this review of him talking about how much is 400 horsepower and just giving you completely nonsense units as an engineer.
Yeah, was that?
As an engineer, I was like, what are you talking about? He's like, if you pilot 6 inches high, it would cover all of Belgium. That's how much 450 horsepower is. It's like, pile what 6 inches high? Your units are all off, Jeremy. You're not going to get anywhere with your units being off.
My first note on this is WTF was that graph, because I was like, what are you talking about? Like,
it's like a Big Ben. What is a Big Ben?
A Big Ben has horsepower, I guess.
Yeah, so there's a lot of hyperbole, and there was a lot of hyperbole in him driving around I guess he just wanted to. I know him and I'm drawing a blank. The one of the Pink Floyd guys was one of the only guys.
Mason?
Yeah, he allows him to drive the Enzo around, and Ferrari wouldn't let him do it. So the Pink Floyd guy was like, "Yeah, he can drive mine around." This is way later when the Enzo is released. So he's got a relationship with these Pink Floyd guys, I suppose, or at least someone in the production office of Top Gear does.
Yep.
Yeah, but they do a direct comparison, kind of mano with the E55 AMG, which is interesting because it's right after the SL55 AMG.
Yep.
But this is a 500 horsepower rear-wheel drive, as you said. And I commented on my notes that Jeremy said as he's driving it around, kind of comparing the two cars back and forth, that he was not really a big fan of the Mercedes Benz service and customer care. It's like, you just bought one. You just bought
Apparently
one.
he's been dealing with them.
Yeah, I don't like them. I don't like them at all.
Yeah, not a fan.
Yeah, so he said that the Mercedes Benz is faster in a straight line than an Audi, but they did run these around the lap.
They did. And
They
it was
did.
in the wet, too. And the wet definitely was affecting it due to the all-wheel drive versus rear-wheel drive.
So the Audi came out ahead 133 in the wet, and he didn't give the time for the AMG, but he said it was 2.5 seconds faster, so 135.5, which is not very good.
It's not great. I mean, it's not horrid, but they're big cars. I gotta imagine, these are 4,000-pound cars.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, now they did, I was kind of bummed. They made the RS6 in Avant trim, which is the wagon or the estate.
Oh my God, yeah.
So much prettier.
Oh
I mean, that's a car that never made it over here.
No.
There's some gray marker ones here, but God, I always like that one. I don't mind the sedan, but oof, that wagon.
Every time I see and this ties in with our guest actually, every time I see a wagon Audi, like an RS6 or I guess RS4 wagon, did they do a 4 wagon?
I think they did.
All right, well, anyway, the RS6 wagon in particular, I think of the movie Layer Cake, which I don't know if you've seen, Jeff.
I have. It's been so long now.
I view it as a drug dealer's car because the drug dealers in that movie, which is a lot of them, drive that. And so that's why I always see it as. But it's also such a nice car. Man, I would love to have the wagon RS6. That's a great one to have.
Yeah. It's I just think that the proportions on it are perfect. Now there's a hot BMW wagon, Mercedes wagon as well. It's not the E55. I don't know the model offhand, but same kind of area. And I like that they like hot wagons over there as well. I wish we liked it more over here.
Did they ever make an M5 wagon?
I don't think so. I think some people kind of homologated their own, just mushed some stuff together, and we're like, voila.
Well, I did post on Facebook the other day. Someone they took all of the M performance package out of an M3 and threw it into a 328 wagon. That was pretty hot. I like that one.
Yeah. I don't think it was ever a factory offered one, but I think it's been done, and it is generally liked. So they mentioned price as well. The RS6 was about 58,000 pounds. The E55 came in at 61. They didn't get numbers on the M5 or the S-Type R.
They said that the M5 was 5,000 pounds more than the Audi. So that would be 63,000.
Really? Interesting.
Yeah.
I would expect it to be just a tad cheaper than the E55 for no particular reason at all.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But yeah, all right. So those would, be in the neighborhood of 120 in today's dollars. So, expensive cars.
It's an expensive car. It's a fast. It's a fast, big, luxurious car. It's going to be expensive. I mean, that's the way it goes. German, all of these things.
Yeah, I mean that's to be expected. Now I'm going to look at the current M5 starts about 95,000. So not far off. I got to assume those were at least somewhat optioned out, and I know M5 or BMW options can certainly get in that price range, as can Audi, as can Mercedes. So,
all right. Well, I guess this is since they did this wasn't they barely showed the laps, Jeff, but they did show the laps.
We did have laps. Yeah,
it was wet to very wet. We'll just give it a wet. What would you say your score for the RS6 is?
I'd give that a 6.
You'd give that a 6, okay?
If it was a wagon, I'd give it a 10.
If it was I would get my score would be higher if it was a wagon. I still do like the Audi. I give it a 7.
Okay.
And then the E55.
I'm going to give it a 4 because I never liked that style.
I don't like it either. And you know what, Jeff? I have to say, I'm not a fan of Mercedes Benz service and customer care. So
Understandable.
So I'm going to go ahead and give that one a downplay. So that was a 4 and a 5. The scores, the RS6 handily beats the Mercedes, as you would expect with those scores from us. It was also 2.5 seconds faster and 3,000 pounds cheaper, so it's going to be better than the Mercedes. It came in at 106.7 on the Top Gear Rearview power rankings, while the Mercedes Benz is down near the bottom. It's a 97. I was under 100, which seeming though 100 is going to be if it's above 100 or below 100, that's our dividing line.
Okay.
That is
good to know.
We've tested 14 cars this season so far, and that is 10th. But the Audi is 4th. Once again, it supplants the Ford Focus Mark 1.
Oh, man. That's surprising.
Right behind the NSX Type R.
Okay. That seems like a reasonable place to put it.
Yeah. So, I mean, we both like it. It's quick. I mean, a 133 in the wet is very fast. That's faster than the 575.
Is it?
That's by 0.2 seconds.
Man, that is cooking.
Yeah, the 575... And the 575 did a 95.2, a 135.2, but they call that one very wet.
Okay.
So it might even be faster depending on what your variation of how wet it was. So,
True.
I mean, faster than a 575, faster easily than the Aston Martin. Yeah, it's going to get a high score.
Faster than the Bentley, the Arnage, the
yeah,
Bellwether.
Yeah, we have the Arnage.
Surprisingly enough.
The Arnage, besides the Suzuki Liana, the only car to test above 100 seconds.
Wow.
All
right. All right. So moving on to this Lada. This was kind of a split segment. We, as they've been doing, they did this a few times.
They're really pulling out the please stay tuned stops. It's really just kind of annoying. But yes, because I know in the future they don't do that because they don't have to because everyone sticks around the whole time. Mm-hmm. Everyone's watching. But yeah, so the split segments are getting me, especially in these 2 episodes. They're very well split.
Yeah. They do it twice in this one, which is interesting. But Ladas I really kind of want to drive one because they have kind of this mystique about them. They're like these Russian, just indestructible cars. They're
indestructible because they have
garbage.
Like 4 parts.
Yeah, they seem like just like a tinker toy car. 35 horsepower out of that 1.5 liter. That has got to be one of the lowest specific horsepower ratings I've ever seen.
Really bad. Yeah, it's really bad.
Yeah, it was. I mean, I don't dislike the car. It looks like a 70. Did they give a model year on that?
I think it was I think it was like 4 or 5 years old.
It was carbureted. I thought that was interesting. It was. I mean, it looked like the 70s, maybe early 80s, like Escort or something.
Yeah. So the idea behind this segment, I guess, was playing up Lotus, I guess, and what can the Lotus Motorsport and Engineering Department do to a Lada Riva 1.5e to make it faster? And that's pretty much it, right? I mean, that's the whole premise is, what can we do?
I think so, yeah. I mean, that was, really trying to make it like something actually worth driving.
Yeah, so...
Man, I'm on the Lada Riva Wikipedia page right now. It's kind of rad. There are a ton of variants, and they're like all carbureted.
Yeah, we'll throw a link up there to that page in the show notes.
Yeah. They made a wagon, too, which is awesome.
Is there a picture of the wagon? Ooh.
Yeah. And they made they have some that are like little trucks and stuff. Oh, this is just beautiful.
I like how the back is slanted forward and the forward is slanted forward. It's like a parallelogram. The whole car is almost a parallelogram if you take out the windshield.
It really is. Yeah, I like it. So the first thing they did they say where the engine swap came from? I think it was a Peugeot.
Oh, I'm sure they did because I talked about it a lot.
Yeah, I didn't get it offhand. I think it was a cheap one, but I thought the rating was funny because 35 horsepower out of that little 1.5 liter, and they went to 180.
I know.
That's 5 times the horsepower.
I had to rewatch that to go, wait, 135 to 180? No. 35.
That's so much horsepower. I mean, that's like taking a Miata, which is like 130 or something, and putting in like a Hellcat engine. Like, it's just bonkers. But totally understand and totally behind that. 180 seems like a fun amount of horsepower for that size car.
I bet it's a pretty heavy car too. I bet it's not very technological.
It's just Russian like pop metal. So.
Just slag, just formed into stuff. I have to comment though, if you have a chance to go check out this episode wherever you can. Jeff and I have been watching them on Daily Motion. The lap that they put the test driver in for this car.
Oh, yeah.
When he comes around, do you see how far that front tire wraps under itself?
Yeah, so I have autocross with some buddies who had just a beater Ford Festiva that they went around, and I mean, I swear to God, I was like, how did you not roll the tire off the rim? Like, you can see the thing. I was like, you're almost touching metal on the ground, but you've not yet unseated the tire.
But your tire's still on.
It's astonishing. And yeah, I saw that, and it was just like a flashback. I was like, I've seen this before.
The tire was like leaning all the way over. I've never seen something like that before. All my vehicle dynamics classes and stuff.
And it was so bouncy too. It was like kind of skipping its way through corners. Oh, it was wonderful. Yeah, I like the test driver would be like, this is probably the worst car I've ever driven.
It has to be the worst car he's ever driven.
Yeah.
Yeah, you should, if you have a chance, everyone, you should check out at least that section. It's about 12 minutes into the episode. It's very
wonderful.
Yeah. So
now looking at... Go ahead.
So I was going to move on to fixing it up.
Oh, yeah, me too. Go ahead.
Okay. So it took them 2 weeks and 1,000 man hours. So I guess, I don't know, like 10 dudes or something like that. 20 dudes, I think they said.
Yeah. Yeah.
And they completely renovated it. And they spent a lot of time in the episode talking about the paint. But did they do anything suspension-wise? Did they talk about the suspension?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. I mean, they had
did.
to.
I was looking at what they put on. Because, I mean, they put on... Yeah, they showed some undershots. And they put on like a full Olin suspension. So, I mean, it was... Nothing messing around. That was $high shocks. And then BBS wheels. I mean, it was like they didn't spare an expense there.
No, they did not. It was I think they said $100,000.
That's what it would cost to like have them do it for you. Yeah, it was $100,000.
That's a lot. But so they put the new engine in. They increased the horsepower by 5 times. Not 5 horsepower, 5 times.
40 horsepower.
Upgrade suspension, upgraded interiors, better seats, racing seats. Yep. I'm sure all of the steering and everything like that has changed out as well. And they did a paint job on it. They spent a lot of time looking at the paint job and like seat covers and stuff like that and what they were doing. But I love the little sickle and hammer in the back corner. Did you see that?
I didn't catch that.
Oh yeah, there's just this little sickle and hammer in the back quarter panel. In the silver paint, it looks real slick.
Nice.
But what was what was the gain that they got in?
I didn't actually write that part down. I don't know how I missed that.
Oh, neither did I. That's why I asked you.
They might not have had it.
No, I don't think they say.
I don't think they do because I would have written it down.
Okay, well suffice it to say it's hella fast now.
Yeah, I mean, I gotta assume it's at 100. I mean, it's not exactly modern anything. Still, it looked like a secondhand engine that was of the late '90s ilk. But it'd probably be somewhere in like the mid 140s.
Yeah.
Versus like the 2.5 minutes for the first one.
Oh my God. After
maybe 3 if you have to stop to change the tire out real fast.
Just pop the tire out. It just go on the wheel. It's okay.
In Soviet Russia, tire pops you.
Just keep... Let's move on. Before we get down a deep road.
Oh, it could get dark.
Dark like the cold, hard winters.
All right, quick stop by the news. I didn't have much in here. They were talking about parking. That was a funny segment, talking about how was it the Vanquish? It was an Aston Martin, and it didn't look like a hideous DB7, so I think it was a Vanquish.
Yeah, it was Rio Ferdinand, the footballer, very famous footballer. His Vanquish. He got a parking ticket. It was all over the tabloids. Tabloids are huge in the UK. All over the tabloids. He got a parking ticket for parking outside of the parking space. But not because he parked outside the parking space, because his car is wider than the parking space.
Yeah, it literally couldn't fit.
At some point, that becomes the city's problem. I mean,
yeah,
not everyone has a Vanquish, I understand, but, I mean, I guess it's a wide car, but,
It is.
Okay.
Not that wide.
Not that wide, right? No, now
Yeah,
we're gonna get someone telling us how wide it actually is.
I know. I'm getting like I ballpark that it's probably like the same width as like I don't know, like a modern SUV.
Probably around that size, yeah.
Yeah. So chalk it up to old roads, I guess.
Just small cities.
Yeah.
What are you gonna do? Put a parking spot here. That's not big enough. Whatever.
Too bad. Hopefully nobody parks big cars there. They also got into, he was reading the tech bulletin, I believe it was from Audi, talking about the DSG. Was that from the TT?
Yes. The
think
TT
so,
with
yeah.
the upgraded engine, but it's only like 15 horsepower or something like that.
And it was heavier. Yeah, it was a V6. They're putting, I think, a 3.2 liter V6 in it. And yeah, so they were trying to talk through how this DSG gearbox worked, and it was fun. It was funny because listening to it, I was like, that all sounds familiar. And then they talked about the nested drive shafts, the hollow shaft, and the clutches engaging. And I was like, oh, it's just a dual clutch. Like this is about the time when dual clutch gearboxes
yeah, it's just
came
a dual
to be.
clutch.
Yeah, so it was interesting hearing them try to explain it, and like the first time I heard it, I was like, yeah, what are you talking about? I don't understand this at all. And now it's kind of commonplace. I mean, they put these things on everything, and those units, I believe in the Audi, I know the Porsches are very good ones, but they kind of perfected it. So
Yeah.
they were obviously out there in front as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's about all I got for the news. Not a lot going on that week.
Not a lot in the news, no. So the next section, Jeff, they're talking about super minis.
This made me very excited because I forgot this section existed, and I drive one of these.
Yes, you do.
Yes,
now,
I do.
A super mini, I guess they were hearkening it back to the days of yore when essentially, the Leyland's Mini was a hot car. So like the 60s and 70s is when this segment arose in the United Kingdom.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And so they're kind of looking for something that had that same, Richard was doing this test, that had that same kind of feel where, yes, it's a small car, but yes, you wouldn't mind driving it every day. And it really was peppy and had some zazz behind it, I guess.
Okay.
And so that's
I was
kind
thinking
of,
super more in the even more mini, being like the really, really tiny ones. But then I was like, no, that's like the Ford Ka and like the Smart.
yeah, I was just saying, it's not, if you want a smaller car, the Fiesta is, I guess, the middle of the line for Ford in the UK.
Yeah.
There is a very much smaller Ford Ka. So yeah, I don't think it's super because it's small. I think it's super because it's
A little more zazz.
It's just better, I suppose. I don't know,
Okay,
yeah.
fair enough.
Little more chutzpah.
Yeah.
So they limited their tests to the 1.4 liter versions. So nothing souped up, no hot hatches, no super bare bones versions to compare against each other. And they compared 5 cars. What were those 5 cars, Jeff?
We had the Ford Fiesta, the Citroen C3, the Honda Jazz, the Nissan Micra, and the MG ZR.
The ZR, or the ZR as we would call it here in the States.
ZR! It's the ZR! If there's no MG here, it doesn't exist here. It's only existing over there. So yeah, he kind of went through them quick. I was expecting a little more out of this one, but I mean, he gotta have like a little thing for each one. So the Fiesta, which I think set the bar, set the kind of midpoint, I would say. 10,000 pounds, 9,995, and he just called it dull.
Yeah,
which I can understand.
That was a generation Fiesta before mine, like one generation before the one that I drove. I drove actually 2 generations of Fiesta. I went from the one right after this one to the one that's current now.
Okay.
And I guess coming from America, being a truck and SUV large car driver, thought the Fiesta was a hell of a lot of fun to drive. So if he was saying it was boring, I'm like, oh, I need to get my hands on something else. I'm going to give me one of these ZR things you got going around. So if he called it boring, then it's interesting to say because I really enjoyed it. I thought it was peppy. I thought it was quick. Maybe there was some changes that happened in the years between 2002 and 2010 that really changed that up. But
I'm sure there was something, or maybe you got a slightly bigger engine. The current generation, I believe actually possibly the previous generation as well, were the ones we got here. We got them like in the early 2010s in the US again after a long absence. And And I've had a few, both as, I've driven some friends' cars who've got mostly the ST, which is a really fun car, or just had them as rentals too. And I honestly like them. I mean, they're not big, they're minis, but they get around just fine. And I think the one we drove down to Colorado for a rental a while ago, like it was cracking 40 miles per gallon without issue.
Oh yeah, no problem.
Yeah, so that was always nice.
Yep. You talk about the Citroen C3, which I think he liked a little bit more in terms of options on the inside than the Ford Fiesta.
Mm-hmm.
But
I didn't have a lot written down. It had a cool. I like the gauge cluster a lot. The linear tack and the segmented fuel gauge and all that. Those were kind of cool.
Yeah, I mean, I don't have anything written down for it. It was kind of just run of the mill, I suppose. Citroen has Richard commented that,
which is a surprise, coming from Citroen, who have in recent years churned out cars blander than chicken in a white sauce.
Yep.
He also commented, I thought I liked this because they always diss on the build quality of Citroen. He says that, once all the extraneous bits of plastic and trim fall off, everything else there is pretty bulletproof.
I did like that.
Once all that useless crap gets out of the way, then it'll probably be okay.
Yeah. Now this is one that we definitely never got over here. I don't know if Citroen. I have to look into it to see if it's really been around. Like, I'm sure they've sold cars in America, and we probably talked about this with the 2CV, but it's been a long while.
I don't think they're ever sold here. Now, someone's probably going to correct this, and if they have been, please do. But I don't think the Citroens are ever sold over here.
As I write the show notes, I find out I'm wrong all the time. Like we talked about the NSX a week or two ago, and I was talking about how the second gen never made it here. Total lie.
Yep.
Definitely sold here. All right, the next one, the Honda Jazz, which is a Honda Fit, came to the U.S. That generation as an 07 and 08 model, and that is my daily. I drive an 08 Fit, so I personally am a fan.
Yeah, you like the Honda Fit?
I do. They we had them over here only in the 1.5 liter engine, so it's a little kick up from this one. They came in a couple trims, the Sport and the, I guess, Base. And the Sport with a manual transmission is not a boring car to drive. It's not, light your pants on fire fast or anything, but I quite like it. It is one thing that he said about that was it was quite roomy and quite practical, and he showed some of the seats and stuff, and it is pretty impressive how much stuff you can fit in there. Like when I go, triathlons or something, like I put my bike in the Fit. I mean, I don't bring anybody with me; it's just me, but I can knock the back seats down and like fit a bike in there, no problem.
Yeah, that's pretty good.
So
it's super.
It is super. I believe he was saying, it also handles a little bit like a roomy car, being a little more top heavy and not quite as fast, and I can definitely see that.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it looked like the biggest one of the bunch.
Yeah, I would agree. It's they are pretty tall. I mean, surprisingly so. So that's probably part of it. I mean, tall equals more frontal area equals more wind resistance, and not a huge engine to push through that wind. So.
Yep.
Yeah.
The next one I talk about is the Nissan Micra, which is another car that I've driven. And I thought this was the blandest car I've ever driven in my entire life. Plus, it's super ugly. Yeah.
I agree. It's not particularly pretty, but man, the list of options that he gave on that, I was like, that is a well-equipped car by today's standards.
Yeah, I mean, I guess the options don't really impress me because I look at it and go, okay, well, I mean, you either get that or you don't. It's just the overarching thing. I thought maybe it was a little more underpowered than the Fiesta that I had at the time, but it was pretty dull to drive, even just in a city. It was a dog. Yeah.
I could see that. But yeah, he said, keyless ignition, which I literally bought a 2016 model car last weekend, and it doesn't have that. Auto, and it's the upmarket version of that car. Auto wipers, mine does have that, and that is super nice. But in 02, kind of unheard of. And
and in a lower end of the entire spectrum, yeah.
Yeah, you got to imagine this is in the neighborhood of probably 10,000 pounds, not too much more. So that's a lot. And then the parking sensors, which, again, that's become kind of a standard feature, but really only in the last maybe 7-8 years.
Yeah, that certainly wasn't normal back then.
Yeah, I find it funny on such a tiny car, you need parking sensors. It's like you just like just J-turn this thing into a parking spot, but okay.
Just grab one of the grannies from a couple weeks ago.
Yeah, have them help you out. Done.
Slam it in. He also says that it has climate control, not just AC and heat, but climate control. Which I guess.
What else is there?
Yeah, I know, right? So yeah, I mean, I guess it's probably pretty good.
Humidity?
It's good. Just adjust the humidity up and down. It's hot, but at least it's dry.
It's a dry heat in the car.
I guess it is probably really good value for money, I suppose.
Yeah, I mean, it looked like it, and I could see that more as like, you know, somebody who maybe doesn't care as much about like zipping around, but a nice, well-equipped car in that price range. I could see them fitting into that market. Now the MG was the last one they had. It sounded like the peppiest of the bunch at 105 horsepower. It was right at that 10,000 pound mark. And again, MG, I don't believe has really sold cars in the U.S. I think the ones that I've seen at least have all been maybe back in the olden days, but I know they've changed hands a lot too, so who knows? But it wasn't a bad looking car.
I don't really care for some of the styling cues on it, but it's not terrible. I'd be fine driving it around. He said it's a Rover underneath, so it's just an MG badge on top of it. But I guess they did some tinkering maybe with the motor to get a little more power, a little more pep. I'm not sure. Or if maybe they just put a bigger boner in it if it's an MG.
Yeah.
Kind of how, the Hondas all have, a certain set of motors, but when you go to the Acuras, they start at like the middle and then go up to one higher. It's kind of like they just up the motors on the size of cars.
Mm-hmm.
Just to make it better.
Yeah. More fun.
So I wonder if it's something like that. It's just the upmarket brand badge of Rover is MG these days.
Yeah. Okay. Well, so I know he marked that one as the kind of, I think he liked that one the most. Called it the sporty one, and then the Jazz being the practical one.
Yeah, I mean that's what kind of led me to believe that the Super Mini really wasn't about them being really small, but them being kind of peppy and zippy like the Mini was, is that they're kind of more, like saying hot hatch, but Super Mini. It's kind of another way to say that.
I'm looking at the page for Super Mini right now, and it's larger than a city car, smaller than a small family car, usually in a hatchback body style, and meant to surpass the original Mini.
There you go.
Yeah, so they're looking at this, the article. There are a few notable missing companies on this list.
Sorry, once again, they left someone off the list.
Yeah, I think they left a few. I think they left Fiat, they left Peugeot, they left Renault, and they left VW.
Yeah, I mean, the Fiat Punto probably would be the one in there?
Yeah, I could see that one.
It's a big car over there.
Yeah, the Peugeot, probably the 205.
Probably.
Yep. They said the Renault 5 in this article and the Volkswagen Polo.
I guess they already did a segment on the 205, I suppose.
Yeah, so that one could be. I could see leaving that one off. And I know, they have a Vauxhall in here as well. I know they're not huge fans of Vauxhall. I can see leaving that one off. But the VW Polo, it does, I think it appears either in next episode, and it does show up a lot later. So I'm kind of surprised that one didn't make it.
Yeah, I mean, I guess you only have so much time, I suppose.
Yeah, and
it'd be nice if they were comprehensive.
Yeah, but a 5 is not a bad comparison. I mean, it's good, but yeah, it'd be good to see a few more of the European options, because this is interesting. You got Ford American, it is European American. I mean, they're made over there. Citroen French, and then I guess one true Brit one, the MG, and then 2 Japanese cars.
All right, Jeff. Let's talk about Sir Michael Gambon.
Let's talk about Dumbledore.
Dumbledore.
He looked kind of young. I was like, man,
he looked a little spry.
Yeah.
So the star and reasonably priced car is Michael Gambon, who is I looked through his Wikipedia page researching this and looked at some of his accolades. Long time and storied, very much vaunted theater actor.
Oh, yes.
In the UK. Many, many decades of theater acting. And has made a crossover, as Jeff said, into not only British film, but into American film with the Harry Potter, which I guess is kind of both British and American film.
Now, quick aside here. Who's the better Dumbledore? Is it...
I liked Harris a lot better.
Harris was good. I think Harris was more true to the books.
I think he was a little more true to the books. Jeff should definitely put a link into the show notes of the... Harry, did you put your name in the goblet of fire? Jeff.
I think I will.
Yeah, I think you're going to have to.
But... Yeah, I like Gambon a lot, but I saw the movies. I did it wrong. I saw the movies before reading the books. And after reading the books, yeah, I think Harris made a better chance. Yeah. Or made a better choice, and it was a better method. But
it's interesting.
Gambon put a spin.
Interesting that Harris played a role that Gambon played earlier in their career as well. So Harris played a detective on a show. I can't pronounce the last name. It's some weird spelling. He played him for 4 years, and then Gambon came in and picked it up after him again. So
all right, just bat and clean up.
Just bat and clean up. That's right. Harris gets him on base, does all the work, and then Gambon comes in for the RBI.
Steals the fire.
Mm-hmm.
We talked a little bit about the history there. He had a Ferrari 348. I'm looking through these, like, my early 90s Ferrari knowledge is lacking.
Yeah. Well, it's because they're all pretty, they're all kind of bland. I looked at the predecessor, which is the 328, and that's instantly recognizable to me as a Ferrari. But when you look at the 348, which was when was that built? It was built from
early
89
90s.
to 95, and you go to the 355, which was the next one. They're like the same car with slightly different vents on them, and they all kind of mashed together.
Yeah.
It was not a very inspired time in Ferrari.
I looked at the 348 and I was like, oh, a Testarossa. Wait, no, that's not a Testarossa.
Wait,
it's
no.
close though. No, it's a mid V8. And the Testarossa is a 12. So
yeah, so it's difficult to kind of pick out some of those, but I of the three, the 328, the 348, and the 355, the 328 is the best by far. Best looking. That's what I would say. That's what I have written down.
Word for it.
Yeah, take my word for it. So I guess he is. I was reading through his Wikipedia page. He's actually an engineer by trade. Did you know that?
I did not.
Yeah, he worked in. His father was Irish. They moved over to London after the war and started rebuilding stuff. And he started working in factories and became an engineer. He's like like a fully fledged engineer. And then he's like, now I'm gonna go be an actor.
Yeah.
And completely
Done with all these numbers.
Leave all that very gratifying and well-paying work for someone else. But he's done all right with himself.
I think so.
He the first movie I saw him in was The Life Aquatic with Steve Zissou, and I thought he was great in that as well.
I cannot even remember him in that one.
Yeah, he was the producer.
Okay. Well, he was Lord of the Rings too. Gandalf the Grey and Gandalf the White.
No.
Dude, bro.
No, that's Ian McKellen.
You're right. I am dumb. All right.
Oh, well.
Edit that out.
Guess who's leaving this into the podcast?
Oh, that was dumb. What was he in? I swear to God, he was in something else. Oh, I gotta look up.
He was in Layer Cake. I don't know if you've seen that one.
I feel like that was the movie that was better than it actually, like, the accolades it got and everything.
Yeah, it was a very
good
movie. It's got Daniel Craig and Sienna Miller and Michael Gambon. It's a very British movie for sure.
Yes, for sure it is.
It's very good.
I'm dumb.
Michael Gambon, we'll breeze right past that. Michael Gambon told a story about another Lord of the Rings actor, Christian Slater.
What the hell was he talking about?
So, the little quarter lights are the little triangle windows that you can turn them and let air in on the old cars?
Why are they called quarter lights? Lights are lights. Those are windows.
No, these are the windows he's talking about. They're called quarter lights.
Okay.
So that's what Christian Slater was driving with. So the story was that Christian Slater took him up the PCH, which Jeremy apparently gave him a weird look for because he had to explain to him that's the Pacific Coast Highway in California, and was sitting in the middle of his VW Bug, steering the car with just wind resistance, using the quarter lights. What would you call those if you don't call them a quarter light?
Vent windows.
Okay, the triangle vent windows.
Yeah.
He was steering the car with that. Which,
I think he said they were doing 105 miles an hour, too.
Which is... this whole story is completely untrue. There's no way that works. That doesn't work that way.
No. That's not how any of this works. I don't know if he's an engineer. Maybe he knows something I don't. But
he's completely putting you on. That's a completely falsehood. Complete falsehood. But he told the story very convincingly.
I guess so, yeah. I mean, I think he seems like a guy who would lie well.
I bet he does.
Yeah.
Well, that's all I have on him. He did a 155 in the wet.
Okay, now, yeah. So he had, like, in my mind, I had seen this before, and I swear I remember him almost rolling that thing.
It didn't look as bad as I remembered.
No,
it didn't look as bad.
A little bit underwhelming. He kind of hopped it and two-wheeled a bit.
So many, many, many years in the future, Tom Cruise does actually roll the thing around that corner. Do you remember the Tom Cruise lap?
I do, and they should rename it Tom Cruise Corner.
Let's not rename it Tom Cruise Corner.
I agree.
We're not going to do that.
Gambon, greater than science.
It's Gambon. But he cuts it a little tight, almost lifts all four wheels off the ground. The inside two come off the ground, and then he finishes the corner. And that's the last corner, which I think was called Baccarat Bend before this.
Yeah, Baccarat or something like that. It had a goofy name, but it was good to be like, Gambon, thank you.
It was bad. It was bad. But in the next segment, when the Maserati goes around, he says, and it comes around Gambon, which we're now calling it. And they got it right away. They just like, we're going to call this corner Gambon.
Yeah.
But anyway, he did a 155 in the wet, which is a 151, which is a good lap for almost coming off the earth. You know.
Yeah, for bunny hopping a car.
Yeah, I mean that's only 1 second behind Jeremy. So.
Yeah. So this Maserati, for whatever reason, it makes sense now. Like I knew the look of that car, that it had like a very distinct look, and I was always like, it's that little Maserati. It's like the Maserati Coupe, and that's just what it is. It's a Maserati Coupe.
That's the name of it. That's the name of the car. Yeah.
What a stupid name. Come on.
Well, the Quattroporte is the same thing.
They're so literal.
Maserati Quattro Wheelo.
Cinco window.
Cinco window. It doesn't have a back right. So
nope. Yeah, that was it was interesting. I mean, I've kind of known for a while. I think I've seen many articles in this car, and if I find them when looking for the notes, I will put some up. But kind of saying like, if you want a Maserati, it's a cheap way to get into one. You're not going to like it, but do it.
There's a reason they're cheap. A, because they break down a lot. B, because it's pretty crappy.
Yeah. You'll buy it cheap, you'll sell it cheap later. So enjoy for 20 minutes.
Yeah.
4.2 liter V8, putting out 400 horsepower.
Nearly.
That's probably the same.
Nearly 400 horsepower.
I wonder if that's the same motor as in the Quattroporte. I wouldn't be surprised.
Probably.
The one thing I did note is when he opens the door and they have the camera in there, this happens on a lot of cars now. The convertibles especially, they roll down the window just a little bit to clear it, and then when they close it, rolls back up. It was so loud. You could hear it on the recording.
Yeah, I mean, the Maserati never really screams quality.
No.
It looks good and sounds good. That being said, I don't think this car looks good. But
I agree.
I
think the modern Maserati looks way better.
Oh, yeah. This had a little bit of the DB7 to it,
Yeah, kind of it's like the eyes that are like a little too round and like too far to the outside, so it's kind of googly eyed.
It looked a little soft, and it drove a little soft.
It did. He called it at one point.
Hammerhead Corner, and oh dear, made a bit of a monkey's breakfast of that.
And I looked that up because I was like, what the hell does that mean? And it is, the Urban Dictionary on this is actually correct and non-vulgar, which I liked. Yeah, it's basically talking about an assortment of random fruits picked by a monkey. So it really should only be for a monkey. So something that's kind of like, random choices of whatever.
Later on in the episode, he says dogs. I've heard dog's breakfast a lot. Yeah. Meaning something that's really, really just last night's crap.
Just thrown together, yeah.
Give it to the dog. So I've heard dog's breakfast before, but not monkey's breakfast.
Yeah, he said it at least twice. So I wrote it down. And I Googled it, and sure enough.
That's one of the things that he says that I hope isn't like under the breath racism that we're repeating.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it's not. Urban Dictionary would have caught up with that. But 61,000 pounds puts it right at the same price as an E55 AMG. A little more expensive than an RS6. Wouldn't really have it over either.
So if this is 61,000 pounds, then I bet the Quattroporte probably just priced itself out of the previous review.
That's probably a good point. I guess it would. I mean, Maserati is a tad more upmarket, a little more like upper echelon than BMW or Audi or Mercedes. So I could see that happening. I can't imagine it's by too much, but we'll have to take a look at prices.
And it did in the I'm calling it very wet because it was actively raining.
It was.
It did a 138, so it takes 6 seconds off their time. All right, Jeff, this was the power lap of the episode.
Which is a bummer, but yeah.
It's a real bummer, but, the other ones, they put them around the track, but they didn't really show it. But this was the power lap.
But they both spanked this car, too.
Yeah, they. One thing I would note is that they removed all the on-screen stats for this one.
I didn't notice that.
They got rid of the map and the G meter and all that. That's all gone, which is probably the end of the short era.
That's a bummer because I like that stuff.
All right, give us a 0 to 10 on this bad boy.
I'd give it a 3.
Yeah, I'd give it a 4. Not very good.
Really? See, I would almost expect you to go lower. Like, this is my sick curiosity to be like, I kind of want a Maserati. Like, would make me one of those guys like, yeah, I'll spend 12 grand for that, and then I'll sell it for 11 next week.
Yeah. Yep. This puts it at 12. It's a 94.4. It is.
Okay. Not at all surprising.
Interestingly, I guess because of the cost, it is 12th place puts it right ahead of the 575M.
Okay.
And right ahead of that, and then right behind the Lamborghini Murcielago. So I think it's because it's only only quote unquote 61,000 pounds. The other ones are 150 and 160. Mm-hmm. That really hurt.
Funny aside about the Murcielago, since we're talking about it. I was watching Fast and the Furious 8 last night, which is a sentence I did not expect to be saying in my life. And towards the end, Tyrese chooses a Lamborghini Murcielago out of the garage, and I was like, "You guys are pulling an old car out." Like, the Merc is the Merc. I mean, it has a place in Lamborghini history, but this movie was made in like 2016. Like, you got the Aventador, you got the Huracan. Like, there's a lot of better Lamborghinis out now. Why are you pulling out a Merc?
We spent a lot of budget on the Rock.
I guess so. Yeah, they sunk it to the bottom of the sea in a bay in Russia. So,
well, that's why.
Bon voyage, Merc. Merc.
I've always called it Merc, even though it's Murcielago.
Merc is Mercedes and Merc is Murcielago. I think Merc is the right way, but that's, I don't know.
It's interesting because neither of them have the hard C.
I know. I agree. It could go either way.
Mercedes Benz.
And a Murcielago.
Murcielago.
That's just a dark lake.
Oh man,
that's a dad joke.
That's a good joke.
Oh, all right. On to potentially my favorite segment of the series because I'm a van guy. The fastest white van man.
Fastest white van man. Now this is the start of white van things that Top Gear does.
Yeah, which I can appreciate. This was the Ford Transit, which is, I mean, we just started getting those recently. And the Ford Transit is essentially the same as the Mercedes Sprinter in terms of usability and all that. And I just love them. They're just like big. They put diesels in them. I don't think this one was a diesel, but...
probably not. The Rally Sport version?
With a whopping 200 horsepower.
Yeah.
Like, come on, it's a van. Get this thing 680 or something ridiculous. Like, the one that Sabine drove, that had to be a hotter one than this, right? I guess maybe not, but...
It's interesting because over here in the States in a van, man, the van is where you got the biggest engine.
Yeah, like my old E250 it has a 351 in it. Like, that thing's got 300 horsepower.
Yeah, so like in the late 70s versions of Ford trucks and vans, the high-end truck gasoline engine was the van engine.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to find anything like white van over here that's not a V8.
All right, so I'm going to give you a quick definition. White van man is a stereotype used in the United Kingdom for smaller-sized commercial van drivers, sometimes gray.
Okay. The van drivers or the vans?
It does not specify.
They both get a little dingy with age.
Oh, it gets better. Hang on, the end of the sentence says that's a comma. Typically perceived as selfish, inconsiderate driver who is mostly petite bourgeois and often aggressive. What does that mean?
He's little and he's cranky and he's gonna steal your parking spot.
It's a French term referring to a social class compromising semi-autonomous peasantry and small-scale merchants whose politico-economic ideologies... Oh, my God. All right, I'm done with that.
Getting a little deep there.
So, that's the commercial vehicle in the United Kingdom. If you're a carpet cleaner or if you're a drywaller or whatever, you drive a van. It's typically a Ford
Makes
Transit.
sense.
That's the way it goes.
I mean, it's really like the Econoline over here. Like, I'm sure it's essentially... Same.
I mean, really, it kind of goes hand in hand with just the pickup truck. Like, you would call it like a white... If you see a white pickup truck out on the road, chances are it's like a contractor who is on a fleet vehicle. It's I think it lines in directly with just the pickup truck with a magnet sticker on the side that says whatever lawn service or gutter makers or whatever. And that's the equivalent of it.
It's just a workhorse vehicle. And
Just the workhorse vehicle.
Accompanying driver.
Exactly.
All right, so we had 5 of them. I got occupation/employers for all of them, but Don. Who did Don work for?
Ugh.
Don't know. I know he liked Steely Dan, and Jeremy liked him because of that. I also know he came in dead last because I think he got lost, like multiple times. He did a 455.
Yeah. He went the wrong way.
About 3 times apparently, because like that is what it should take. I mean, you should be able to do that lap like at least 2.5 times in that. So the other 4 were surprisingly close, I gotta say, like especially coming from the religious leaders. Was that last week? Week before last? Nope, last week. Yeah, like the last 4 here were within 7 seconds of each other.
And the last 2 were within a second, right?
Yeah.
And who knows how close they actually were with their stupid rounding that they're doing right now.
I know, they're doing whatever they feel like. So 4th place was John with the Royal Mail at 209.
The red van, man, really.
The what?
The Royal Mail vans are red.
Okay, fair enough. It's a white van underneath.
Yeah, okay.
Roger, the plumber, who I think was actually a heater guy.
Yeah, it looks like he did HVAC and really did not enjoy being called a plumber a couple times.
No, apparently that's an insult, so sorry, Roger. 205 for him. All right, so the last 2, these were very close. Just barely edging out. Dale came in first with 202 versus Steve's 203. Now, Dale also kind of broke the car by blowing that tire. So
he did it at the right spot. He did it right at the very end.
True, so he could just kind of limp it across the line. I like Steve worked for Iceland, which I was like, that's a country, and they kind of made that joke too. What is Iceland? Is it a delivery company?
Oh man,
come on, you're supposed to know, Mr. UK living guy. I'm putting you on the spot here.
It's a supermarket. I knew that.
Oh, okay, all right, that makes more sense.
Yeah.
And then NTL, I assume, is one of the distributors or one of the like trucking companies, National Transit Line or something.
Sounds like it.
So NTL edged it out with a 202. Dale, despite a blown tire, did win it. So yeah, good spread. I gotta say. I mean, I find it interesting that they're putting these kind of seemingly they're professional drivers, but not professional race drivers, and they're putting them in like true kind of race cars, like they did with the religious leaders in the STI.
Well, one of the religious leaders was a race car driver.
Yeah, and I don't know. It seems like a bold move. I don't know why they're not using the Liana, but just to fully level the playing field. I think I
would have liked it to be in the Liana so I could compare it to all of the normal celebrities.
I know. It's such a nice just flat plane where you can put like literally everybody like
and apparently F1 drivers later on.
Yeah, it's coming.
It's coming.
Well, that's about it for episode 8. So I hope you enjoyed it. We're edging towards the end of this season. We're just about out of series 1 and the demise of Mr. Daw. He didn't have a big part in this episode. Did they ever use car corner?
They did.
Did they? I don't even remember what they had. I wrote it down the next one, but not this one.
I skipped through it.
All right, fair enough. It was nothing impressive. I think it was super cheap Ford Ka's, which is kind of why it was like a $4,500.
That's exactly what it was, because that's when I wrote it down. Like, hey, what about the Ford Ka?
Yeah,
that's way super minier.
Yeah, that is true super mini in terms of like mini. Anyway, if you're enjoying this, which we hope you are, we'd love a subscription on iTunes. Any reviews on there also help us out. We have a Facebook page that we're kind of posting on at least a couple times a week, ideally daily. And then these episodes are also available on our YouTube channel, which you can find on YouTube by searching Top Gear Rearview, if that's your preferred method.
If you enjoyed the podcast, we appreciate you listening, and please tell a friend about it. But you said all the stuff, so I guess we'll just talk next week.
All right. Sounds good, buddy. Well, on that note, we will talk for episode 9.